Gambia's COVID-19 deaths hits 137 new cases reported. Young Ghanaians venture into farming as cover for job losses. Well, this and more coming on the way on the world today. This is Africa TV and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin. I am Amadou Kante. Many thanks for joining us, and now the news in detail. We begin with the latest COVID-19 update in the Gambia, because the single COVID-19 death reported in the Gambia on Thursday has taken the death toll to 100. This is the first death reported in 1 week, according to the data from the Ministry of Health. With 37 new cases recorded, the country currently has a total of 3,230 coronavirus cases. Of these, 1,749 are active cases and 1,481 persons have recovered. Currently, the Gambia has 106 people in quarantine and 400 probable cases. And from that latest update on the COVID-19 situation in the Gambia, next we head to Nigeria, because Nigerian resident doctors are holding another indefinite strike barely 3 months after staging the first one despite the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the doctors, the latest protest is due to the government's failure to respect their demand for better working conditions. But the government say over 50% of their demands are met, and they will further engage the doctors on the matter for ultimate breakthrough. Here's more details of that in this report.
It's the second time in less than 3 months that the resident doctors, as they are called, will be embarking on an indefinite strike action despite the coronavirus pandemic. But unlike the first time when doctors at COVID-19 centers were exempt from the strike, the entire 16,000 population of the resident doctors are taking part in this latest industrial action, which is aimed at compelling the government to meet their demands for better welfare.
They have failed to procure a genuine life insurance, group life insurance for doctors and all health workers that have been fighting this pandemic. As we speak now, we have lost 14 of our members, and none of them has been able to get any claim from any life insurance company. That is one of the demands too. Government has failed to pay us the COVID inducement allowance they agreed to pay us from April, May, June, July, August, September. And in that agreement, it also stated that by September, they will review the hazard allowance, which is the sponsored sum of 5,000 naira, to a better, reasonable amount. Then the state hospitals, tertiary health institutions have failed to implement the Residency Training Act of 2017, which is a law of the federal government of Nigeria.
But the country's Minister of Labor and Employment in a statement accused the doctors of being economical with the truth, insisting that more than half of their demands have already been met. He's now called a meeting with the leadership of the doctors to iron out the areas of differences.
If they can offer us something that will be tangible, we definitely want to go back to work. We want to go back to work, so we are not putting a timeline or anything on when we want to call off the strike. So I know that our members will not want to hear anything until they see tangible outcome.
While Nigeria's COVID-19 toll has been on the decline in the past few weeks, the strike action is likely to cripple an already overstressed healthcare sector, as more healthcare workers' unions are now threatening to join the industrial action.
You know, this issue of payments and strikes is becoming a problem in this country. You know, people should be paid their dues because they have families. They have to feed their families. They have their own things they want to do. But the oath they took while leaving the medical school also says they should, no matter how difficult it is, they should take care of lives. If they abandon those patients in the hospitals and they die, they've not been able to meet their moral obligations.
Attention is now focused on that meeting between the government and the doctors. If both sides fail to reach some kind of agreement, it could derail the country's fight against the COVID-19 pandemic.
Nigerian resident doctors are, of course, holding a second strike barely 3 months as government failed to respect their demands. And from that report in Abuja, Nigeria, next we head to South Africa because South Africa has recorded a historic decline of the country's economy thanks to the coronavirus global pandemic. Experts say it will take years before the Rainbow Nation to recover from the economic downfall. Despite the government's bailout package during the lockdown, South Africa has been the hardest hit country since the outbreak of the pandemic in Africa, and businesses were shut down to halt the spread of the virus. Here's more details of that in this report.
South Africa's latest gross domestic product figures revealed just how severely the economy was impacted by COVID-19 during April and June this year. The president instituted a hard lockdown on the 27th of March, closing off all borders and economic activity.
This was a really, really big decline, the biggest decline ever recorded for South Africa. And certainly also, I think it's going to take us years to catch up on this. It's probably, we're looking at a period of 4 or 5 years to get back to levels we were in 2019.
9 out of the 10 sectors of the economy declined sharply. Agriculture was the only sector that showed growth. Manufacturing posted the biggest loss of 74.9%, followed by trade, catering and accommodation that was down 67.6%. No surprise as all movement and tourism ground to a halt.
South Africans at least were fed during the lockdown. So we've seen growth in the agricultural sector because that's the mainstay of food security. So that has shown very positive growth in the process. But also what we've seen is how the labor-intensive sectors have been negatively impacted on. Both mining and quarrying and manufacturing spectacularly dived because of the lockdown.
Economists expect a slight recovery in the third quarter, but that may be muted with increasing power shortages and deepening unemployment.
30% of all adults are officially unemployed, and the broader unemployment number is nearer 40%. We are losing jobs, we know that. It is really a concern, I think, that we have. We have to be very careful how we handle economic policy from now on, and we're going to have to be much more market aware and business aware than we've ever been in our lives before.
Women have been the most affected by the lockdown. Specifically, women have lost their jobs, impacting negatively on various households. Some of the households going to bed without food. So we need to really move speedily to opening up the economy, and in opening it, ensuring that we bring in more women back.
The government provided a $30 billion relief package during the lockdown, but it did very little to protect industry and business. Experts say it will take a few years before we see any real recovery in this economy.
South African economy greatly affected due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and from that report there, we will now take a break and come back shortly with the remaining update stories. Stay with us, we'll be right back, not to come. Welcome back, and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin on iAfrica TV. And now to the rest of the stories. Up next to Ghana, because the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has allowed young Ghanaians to venture in agriculture as a source of employment. Over 40,000 people lost their jobs due to the economic challenges brought about by the COVID-19 global pandemic. The government intends to invest more in agriculture and job creation in a bid to attract young people into farming as unemployment rate increases. Let's have more details of the report.
After the coronavirus pandemic hit Ghana, 20 acres of maize is almost ready for harvest.
COVID-19 really exposed the fact that, food security is always a major concern for every community or every country. And when we realized that, importation and exportation were becoming a problem, we needed to think of how we're going to survive on our own. So a lot of the state institutions started raising conversations on agriculture and food production and everything. And we realized that it is important for us to get into food production.
Farming has not always been Perry's desired occupation. Like many Ghanaian young people, he's also pursued white-collar employment but could not secure a sustainable job. Ghana's Statistical Service says 42,000 people lost their jobs due to the coronavirus outbreak since March.
The only field of work that can never be stopped is agriculture. Reason being, no matter what happens, people need to eat.
And it's not just Perry who's seen an opportunity in farming. 19 young people are employed on this farm. Perry says there is a need for investment in skills development to attract more young people into agriculture. And by engaging them in farming, he hopes unemployment rate in Ghana can be reduced. Ghana's unemployment rate is projected to hit 7.3% by the end of this year. The government says it is engaging 60,000 young people in its Planting for Food and Jobs program and hopes to make farming more attractive to younger workers. Still, some farmers say more needs to be done.
The only thing the government should do is that it should put a policy in place and also find some land for them to try them and see. Anyone who is interested, okay, they give him the go-ahead, they give him the necessary supports.
While COVID-19 has pushed some Ghanaian young people into farming, many now hope to make agriculture a full-time job, with ambitions of feeding Ghana, but also growing enough produce to export abroad.
Young Ghanaians turned to farming amid the impact of the COVID-19, and from that report in Accra, Ghana, finally to North Africa, because with over 28 million students and more than 1 million teachers, the Egyptian Ministry of Education has announced its regulations for schools to resume in October 2020. The ministry has further tasked each school principal to prepare a 2-day schedule per week for each student amid the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. However, some parents have expressed concern over the long stay of students at home while welcoming the government decision to reopen schools with proper COVID-19 regulations. Let's have more details of that in this report.
With 28 million students and 1.3 million teachers, in addition to management staff, nearly 1/3 of the Egyptian population are in schools. Due to the high risk to public health safety, the Egyptian Ministry of Education has announced its regulations for schools operation under the COVID-19 pandemic. Starting 1 month later this year, Egypt is giving time for each public school principal to plan their own schedule. Students will attend a minimum of 2 days a week in rotations.
The government is doing great in efforts to protect students from COVID-19 because kids in younger ages do not have internet access and they will attend school the most. Sports will be practiced at least once a week for all grades to boost immunity. High school grading is now much more flexible.
The Egyptian Thanawiyya Amma, the high school certificate, is introducing multiple choice questions-based exams which will be graded electronically. Students will have the chance for make-up exams to improve their grades. In schools, the use of personal preventive equipment will be a must. Teachers will be instructing students to wash their hands regularly. Despite all these measures announced, many parents are still worried.
Of course, I'm very concerned, but I also believe we must face this crisis. We must make our children aware about personal hygiene. They must learn that there is a risk. For them to stay at home is no longer a proper solution.
مش حل ان احنا ان هم يقعدوا في البيت ابدا.
المفروض الدولة يعني تدعم شوية.
The state must help with the face masks and the disinfectants. There is a lot of pressure on parents. All our income has decreased because of the pandemic. We are barely making a living. We can't afford additional costs. Life is very expensive.
All education materials will be available on online platforms to be accessed from home or from schools' computers. Videos of teachers explaining each lesson will be available on YouTube. Moreover, additional tutoring support will be available at schools for those who need it.
Schools set to reopen in Egypt after many months of closure due to the COVID-19 global pandemic. And of course, from that report there in Cairo, Egypt, we finally brings this news bulletin to an end. But for more details on this and other stories, you can also log on our website, honafrica.tv. Once again, many thanks for the pleasure of your company. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and bye for now.